But before that, for so many years, I was doing contract work. So contract work with Capital One, Fiserv, companies that nobody heard of as well.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. Today I have a special guest. Her name is Tracy Hill, and she's the founder and CEO of A Woman Up. Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Been
thanks for
waiting
being
a
here.
while to be on here. I'm really happy to be on.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Let's just jump right in. I
hmm
see that you've spent 2 decades promoting tech equality and empowering women. I love that.
hmm hmm
And
hmm
so, what motivated you to embark on that journey?
I got into IT staffing a long time ago. Tell you my age, so I was started when I was 7, so in the late '90s, and I stumbled in on it. So back then, in the late '90s, technology was just like really like a big deal. Like nobody knew about it. People paid a bunch for it. I remember in '99 when everybody was trying to find people with COBOL because of 2000 and everything was going to just crash. The whole world was going to crash and all this other stuff. So it was not as available and people weren't as knowledgeable about it as they are now. But I stumbled into because what I did was I did startup and restarts of staffing and sales companies or divisions or offices. And I stumbled into staffing. And then I stumbled into technical staffing. And when I was doing that, I realized that there just weren't a lot of people to fill the positions, or I was in places because I started in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then I later did a startup in Richmond, Virginia. So we're talking about places that are south, and they did not think of women, and they definitely didn't think about people of color. And I actually had people ask me for, I mean, literally, oh, you remember the girl that was here before and she was blonde? Can we have her? We want her back. And I'm like, we don't just. That's not how it works. It's like so it was a lot of reading off of cue cards instead of going, what the. So I actually would have to be creative, as we had to be back then, in finding people who had the skills or the ability to learn how to do whatever the client needed. And so because I come from DC, Chocolate City, and well, now it's more like mocha latte, but but I didn't see color. I saw skills. I saw desire. I saw So that was my thing. So that's how I got into it, because I was just like, I gotta find more people, and then people were interested, and then I could figure out how to put them into positions that would be good for them and actually good and also good for the client. The client got what they needed,
Yeah,
and I had to be covert in doing it. It was like taking the names off of the resume, taking any fraternities or sororities off, taking off if they went to a HBCU, anything that could be an identifier of their color, their race, Muslim, all kinds of things would stop people from what Indian names. It was all kinds of things that were really deterrents for people for hiring people, especially in the South. So to the point where when I was in Richmond, I had to hire a white woman to be the face of our office. So I was on the phone doing sales, I was doing all this other stuff, and I hired her, and she was the face of the office until I would find clients that had transitioned from the north, and they wouldn't have a problem working with me. But because I wasn't from Richmond or didn't go to high school in Richmond, which I was like, high school? Why are you worried about what high school I go to? They wouldn't, they would just like, they would be very nice in saying no. So I had to. So, it is what it is. But it was a lot of work, but it was fun. And I did get a lot of people into the IT and the technical careers that they wanted. Back then, we had a lot of Radio Shacks, and a lot of people were very good at just updating software on desktops, installing new software. Whenever a company needed those updates, that was easy, right? And so people got in that way, and they would get that experience and then move up and learn more.
do
So
you, do you still have that severe an issue today, or has it changed at all?
no, it's not as severe. The problem is that some of the technology that is out And because technology changes so quickly, finding people who have that skill set to work at companies like Meta or Capital One or Fiserv or Accenture Federal or whatever, to find people to do the work, it's a combination of finding people who have the skills and the knowledge or the education sometimes, or, maybe did an internship or something like that. That's probably the biggest thing, because things happen so fast. I remember when I was looking for people to do machine learning, at the time it was like hard to find, back in the day when we were trying to just get internet into everybody's house, and what's that broadband, that thing you had to dig under I can't remember what it's called, but we had to put the big cable in the ground and then put it into people's houses. I found this place on Capitol Hill, little teeny little spot where they were teaching guys how to put this stuff in and to do it. And so I recruited out of there. And luckily the company I worked with actually, would expand their experience. So we were able to staff things that other people couldn't do. The project managers were like, yes. So you have to be creative, and back then we still had, the internet, but we didn't have it where, Jesus, it wasn't as expansive as it is now. So
that's crazy. So a woman up, I see that you've partnered with some big industry folks. Who are some of the people that you've partnered with? Some of the companies?
Well, I was a permanent employee of Meta. But before that, for so many years, I was doing contract work. So contract work with Capital One, Fiserv, companies that nobody heard of as well. Who else? Accenture Federal, AARP. And then companies that nobody, government contractors that people don't really know about, who needed cleared folks. A lot of geospatial people were needed at one particular time. Just whatever. So they either bring me in to find certain people. So in 2016, I was dead dog tired. I was doing startups and restarts for a long time. That meant traveling, that meant firing and hiring and taking on major responsibility of revenue or whatever for that particular office, depending on if it was a staffing company that I was working with or working internally with a company. And so I just said, I was tired. I was like, this is too much work. And I had 2 small children. So that's when I left doing that and went into corporate recruiting and corporate HR. So I was doing HRBP and staffing work while that was happening. So yeah, I just I did a lot of contract work during that time. And so that really was fun because I got to learn new technologies. I, got to meet a lot of people. I loved helping managers understand how to hire, how to onboard, how to train, how to retain. It's like, we look hard for these people. You better keep them. So it was really good, the organizational development part as well as the professional development, helping the people grow. And a lot of people didn't even know who their HRBP was. And they were tentative about applying for other positions unless they came from a larger organization where they understood that. So, and that's a lot of women did not advance their careers from the time that they were interviewing until the time that they wanted a promotion, and that's the part that inspires me to focus on women and especially women of color. But women overall. I had a manager at Fiserv. She had been there for 5+ years. She had a really good resume and she could not grow in this big company. Excuse my English, big ass company. Okay. She couldn't grow and she had to leave. Now, sometimes that has to happen, right? You have to leave to whatever. I remember one time I left a company and I was making no money. And then they recruited me back and they more than tripled my base, right? Which was ridiculous. I'm like, why didn't you just give it? I would have stayed if you would have done that the first time. A lot of times we just can't grow, either we don't know how to market ourselves within the organization. We feel like people should recognize what we're doing and nobody has to recognize anything we're doing. You know what I'm saying? It's our job to promote ourselves. And so a lot of times it was just, hard for women to get the money coming in the door and to move up after they were in the door. So many times.
So what are some key strategies that you think are essential for women to like amplify their voice and strengthen their credibility
Oh,
in a male-centric, workplace?
isn't it crazy that it's still male centric though? That's crazy.
It is crazy. Well, like we talked about before we hit record. I mean,
Mhm.
it's been something I've dealt with for a couple of decades, and I'm actually amazed that it's still something that women have to
Mhm.
deal with. At this point in time, you'd think men would have figured out that like I don't know, but most people either, if they're married, they have a wife, they talk to their wife. Do they not understand how intelligent that woman is? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. So I don't know. Do you
Yeah,
have
it
any
doesn't.
strategies then?
Yeah, I mean, I want to just say something about what you just said about having a wife and isn't that wife intelligent? A lot of times, the people that are sitting right there with us, we don't really pay attention to how
Mm,
smart they are, how much they have to offer. I often have to tell my husband, "Hey, I'm not your enemy. Like I'm here to help. I'm helping." And so then he'll calm down and go, "Okay," but he's it's combative, it's this, is that, and I'm like, "Dude, what's up? I want you to win. We're gonna retire together. We got to make sure we have our money together." So, but really, that's what it is. Sometimes even managers inside of companies don't shop in their own shops to look for the skill set that they need. They immediately feel like they have to go external, right? And that's not always the case. So, that's what I ask them from an HRBP standpoint and organizational development standpoint. Who can you train? Who wants to grow? Do you really understand the path that they want, and then have that conversation and start grooming them to go that direction, right? That's how you retain people, and that's how people are not going to want to leave if they know they have a future and they're appreciated
I
and they're
agree.
being allowed to grow. That doesn't happen. So getting back to women, that doesn't happen a lot. And I have to honestly say, and women may get mad at me for saying this, but please don't, because I literally have talked to a gazillion of women, okay? And mainly in the technology space. But even the people that I would manage who were recruiters or salespeople would have some salespeople a little bit more, you know, got a little bit more going on as far as their ability to promote themselves. But what happens is all of a sudden it's a personal thing, and it's not personal. It's not personal. When you're looking for a job, you are making a deal that is going to pay you 150,000 or 50,000 or whatever it is to deliver a service. So what I tell women is write down all the things that you've done that are applicable to what you want to do, that are applicable to the job description. So say you have a job description, you should write 2 or 3 bullets for each line item on that job description. And then you want to quantify it. I came in under budget. I came in blah, blah, blah. I had resources taken away from me, and I still got it done on time. I had to learn new whatever. I had to blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, I saved this much money. I made this much money. Quantify every single thing. What problem did you solve? How did you resolve it? Right. And you can be expansive on this because, as you're looking, you'll end up being able to, make it a shorter line item that goes on your resume or wherever. But just really understand that you're a service. Nobody owes you shit. You know what I'm saying? Nobody owes you anything. Okay. So if you don't see yourself as a solution, your growth is going to be limited, and you cannot take it personally. The people that I talk to who do really, really well are people who have been in sports, because they understand I have to prove myself every time. I got to make a goal. I got to make a hit. I got to whatever it is. This is both men and women. Okay. They understand the team aspect of a sport, and they understand the individual part of that sport, and they know they have to come ready and prepared and focus on that sport when they're doing it. It has nothing to do with anything else. And so I'm not saying that there aren't biases, because there are, but we don't want to bring them to the table, right? We want to come to the table. And that's why amplify your voice, whether you're at the kitchen table or the conference table, is so important, because it's the same process. When I'm talking to my husband about something, I'm selling him what I want to have done, right? Whether, I want lobster or steak at dinner. And, remember that place that had that really great steak? And he's like, well, I really want lobster. And I'm like, well, where do we have good lobster that's open, right? I mean, you always are going to be selling something, right? So, but when it comes to work, you have to be very intentional and do your research. There are websites out here that have all kinds of information. I mean, Glassdoor has, been used forever now for like, what are people paying? And then reach out to other people in the organization. And one thing I liked about Meta is that they introduced you to people who worked in the area that you're interviewing for so that you could get more insight before or during your interview process, because it was 5 interviews. A lot of we have access. We have LinkedIn. We have all these things that we can do to go and do informational interviews or have conversations with people. And people love talking about themselves. So if you reach out to somebody and say, I really want to know how you got to this point in your career, and you send that out to 20 people, you're going to get 1 or 2 people who pay attention to LinkedIn who are going to respond to you. You know what I mean? So, and most women understand, the need to share that information. So that's really, and the other thing is, so that's, and even when you want a promotion, go look at the job description or have an informational or informative conversation with the manager and say, what is it you want? The job description is usually a wish list. There are certain things on there, depending on who the recruiter is, and if they know how to really write a job description. There's some things on there, and I look online now, and they're so much better than they used to be. Oh my gosh! But some of the stuff on there is stuff that they really, really don't need, but they just want. Okay. And if you sit down with the manager, even on the interview in a company that you're not even in yet, and just say, what gap is this feeling on your team, right? So this is what you guys do. You have deliverables. Give me an understanding of the structure of the team and where you feel like you have a technical gap. And then they'll start talking, because you're talking to them about the division or the group that they manage, and talking to them about deliverables, talking to them about goals, things that the company wants from them, right? So you're looking at it in a more of a global view, right? Instead of saying, just talking about that job. So, that's why you want to ask, is this a new position, or did somebody get promoted? Somebody quit? What happened? And then it lets you know kind of, are you filling a spot that's already open, or has expansion happened? So you want to be very consultative in your Q&A. For both promotions and first-time interviews into a company. And I think that if you don't take it personally, it goes a lot better. And be very intentional about what it is you want to talk about, because sometimes they'll open it up and say, well, tell me more about yourself. And you're like, oh my God, what do you want? Be specific, and you always want that to be, based on your accomplishments and your contributions, whatever it is, it's similar to what they're looking for. We don't want to have to, they don't care about, your swimming and all that stuff.
Right. But it sounds like a lot of the advice you have there is related to just basic marketing of your skills, making sure that you're making people aware of what you have. And I mean, it's kind of sad to hear you say, like, when you first started out, you had to like take out identifying factors that could tell, what type of who this person is. But I could understand why. But like, what happens when, you do that and then the person says, yeah, I want to interview this person. And then they show up for an interview and it's a black woman, and they're kind of adverse to that. What happens? What usually occurs there?
Well, because I'm the kind of person that will ask the questions. Okay. Like, you're not going to just, after I did all this work and this person coming in to the interview, and you're not going to interview them. Oh no, you're going to talk to this person. So I'm like, hey, if you wanted to see them, they obviously something had to happen. And then the thing is that when you're selling people, when you're selling a person, you're selling a skill, you're selling a service.
Exactly.
So what you're asking on the front end, you're closing the hiring manager or HR, whoever is talking to you, up front. So what is it that you want? Okay, do they need to have this? And so all these things you're closing them on. So when they meet the person, they know this person does all these things. And then and I teach people who are in recruiting, you send them those bullets ahead of the meeting. And that way they remember why they're talking to this person. One strategy that we used to use is to go in the interview and sit in the interview. Now, how we sold it as a staffing company or as a recruiter, because I did this whether I was in corporate or not, was I would sit in on the interview, especially early on back in Charlotte when people were like, no, no. I'm like, and I can't remember who told me to do that. It was somebody down in Charlotte that told me. So we sit in on the interview, and from a standpoint of a vendor, I would say to the client, the reason why I want to sit in is to understand the kind of questions you're answering so I can recruit better for you. A lot of it was also, I want to know if you tell me you don't want this person, then, and I'm hearing that it's a match, then you got to give me some more information. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's up? So I'll sit in there. We sit in the interview, and I tell them I'm a fly on the wall. I ain't saying nothing. I'm not doing. I got a piece of paper and a pen. That's it. And then once the interview is over, I would have the candidate leave and go sit in the lobby or whatever. And I would stay in there with the client, and I would let the client know that this is what I was going to be doing up front. Right? They knew that I was going to be doing, so they didn't go like, "Well, why are you still here?" So I would say to the client, we're going to spend, 2-3 minutes or whatever talking afterwards. And then I would say, what do you think? And they would tell me, and I knew if the interview bombed or not, you know what I mean? So if it bombed, I would just say, okay, where did we miss? What did we miss? It sounds like we missed this, this, and this. But if it went well, I'm like, well, when can they start? Especially if it's a contractor. You don't need to have 15,000 interviews with a contractor.
Well, right. So, and it's interesting because what you're saying is you advocate for your candidate.
People.
And
yeah,
I was sitting here thinking as you were talking, and I was thinking about the fact that that's a really smart idea because you take out all of the identifying factors, and then you say, all right, what is it about this resume that interests you? Why are you interested in talking to this person? And you write down those points. Then it might be a week or two later that they're going to do the interview. You send it over that, remember, these are the things that you said, talked, were strengths of this resume and reasons why you like the person. And at that point, if they refuse to interview the person, well, you know exactly why. It has nothing to do with qualifications because you've shown them we already had this talk. We know that this person has this, and this skill that you need. And I don't, and I said this to somebody in my last episode, I don't care if they're green, brown, orange, doesn't matter. If they can do the job, why aren't they getting hired? And if they're the right person for the job, why aren't they getting hired? I mean, I can see. I know that some people rely on what I think is a tired old excuse of, well, we're mostly men, and I'm not sure a woman would be comfortable here. And I always say, let the woman decide that for herself.
Well,
what
part of what I do, let them come in and they'll see the environment. Yeah. They'll know if they want to be there or not in the interview process, right? But here's what I say, and this is one of the things that I do when I go into companies and talk to them about women empowerment and how you can help women learn how to grow, learn what to do I have one company I'm talking to, and hopefully I'll be able to work with them. But what she was saying was that one woman said to her employee said, well, there was a job that was posted and I was a great fit for it, but nobody called. She didn't even know that she could apply because she thought she would get in trouble or it was wrong. So she didn't even know the process, which is like something that needs to be fixed, right? But she also thought, but she was waiting for people to call her. You know how many people in the company, especially the company I'm talking about is pretty big, that have the same skills or have the ability, but it's your connection to that manager, right? That process, or your HRBP that will help you with the trajectory of your career within that organization. So, so my whole thing is you can't just assume that people know what the process is. You can't assume that they know that they can interview or even talk to and have informal or informational interviews with other managers on other teams. You just don't. But if that's part of what you can do in the company, you can do it. Now, a manager might be like, "Oh my God, I got to backfill this person because they're going to go somewhere else." That's how your manager got where they are.
True.
They didn't get to their position by just sitting around waiting for somebody to knock on their cubicle, door or whatever. So, yeah, it's a part of the whole thing, and HR dictates, helps with that, not just the managers.
Well, and I think sometimes people, especially on internal promotion paths, I think people forget that they still need to ask for the role. To me, if I see an ad online, I'm not going to just stare at the ad and go, oh, maybe they'll call me, because they don't know about me. I have to let them know about me. Well, it's the same thing. You may be at a certain level in your company, and position above you opens up, and you think you're qualified for that position. And let's even take it further. You have a connection to the manager hiring that position. They know you for whatever reason. Still requires you to open your mouth and say you're interested. I can't tell you like how many times
Exactly.
when I was a CTO that I had people, male and female, come to me after the fact and say, "Oh, you already hired for that job? I really wanted that job." You never said anything. How am I
Exactly.
supposed to know you wanted the job if you don't say anything? So
Right. Yeah.
not
I'm in
being afraid to
IT,
open
not
your mouth, right?
telepathy. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you have to. And it, even if you are shy or introvert, send them an email. There's
Yeah.
all kinds of ways to communicate, whatever Slack whatever you use to communicate with people, communicate on whatever internal situation you have. And, you can go from there. But, contact the recruiter. There's always a recruiter connected to the role, depending on the size of the company, but normally, right? So I would get calls all the time, or messages all the time. Hey, I see your name is on this rec, or blah blah blah. Right? The people who knew that they could, or didn't know what the process was, but was going to ask me. Right? So, yeah, so that was, it's important to advocate for yourself. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't know how to navigate these majorly matrixed organizations. You know what I mean? They're kind of
Yep.
afraid of, and they think it's political and all these different things. And that's one of the things that I help women with, is how to navigate these very matrixed organizations, right? And there's subtle professional ways to understand what's going on, and for people to understand you. You don't have to just bust in the door and be like, yo, I'm a Black woman and I need to get a promotion, because there's a but there's a lot of women who, take it personally, men too, but I'm talking about women,
Right.
who take it personally, and forget that they are offering something and they're getting paid for it, and that's the bottom line. How can you help me with this? And then of course you want to know that the personality, and you all can work together, and culturally you guys can whatever. But the skills and services that you offer, and the intellectual knowledge of the company. I mean, there's so many reasons to have that conversation. And a lot of people don't realize it until they talk to me. I'm like, well, what about this? And they're like, oh, I did. Oh, yeah.
Right. Right. They have those epiphanies because they're hearing it from
Yeah.
your mouth. Yeah. Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I really love your energy. You have a great energy
Oh,
about
thank
you.
you.
And this has been a great conversation. Why don't you let my audience know where they can connect with you online?
Mm-hmm. Well, my name is Tracy Hill, Tra. Well, I won't spell it because I know it's going to go up here, but my name is Tracy, and my email address is Tracy at a woman up, Traci at a womanup.com. And our website is a womanup.com. So just hit me up on there. I'm on LinkedIn, Tracy Hill. We have a woman up on LinkedIn as well. I don't do social media that much. It drives me crazy. And anybody who's interested in having their company have a workshop or a keynote speaker or a panelist about these kinds of issues, helping women understand how to find their voice, understand the process within your organization, and how to navigate that kind of thing, give them some comfort in growing, and or also helping other people who don't identify as a woman understand how to help women, because sometimes we don't know what we can do, right?
Right.
So how can we also help women, whether you're a manager or a peer or whatever, to help women grow and feel more comfortable inside of your organization?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think more people need to reach out to someone like you to get help with that because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I want the executives listening to this show to pay attention what was just said.
Mm-hmm.
You sit down, and we've all had this experience. You sit down with someone who has a particular mission that relates to something you're doing, and you
Mm-hmm.
talk to them and they say, "Well, have you thought about doing this? Or did you try
Mm-hmm.
this? Did you try that?"
Mm-hmm.
And you go, those things crossed my mind, but I didn't even think they were relevant. But by talking
Mm-hmm.
to somebody who, I mean, I'm going to use the term expert, to talking to someone
Mm-hmm.
who's an expert on that issue,
Mm-hmm.
they open your eyes to those things. And I think it's worth even just a short, like a quick phone call. Just get on a
Mm-hmm.
call with somebody for 15 minutes and pick their brain a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's a good, potential engagement here for any company. So like if you guys are struggling at all, like with pushback from your leadership, having someone like Tracy you come on board and talk to them changes things. And so, that might be the answer to your struggle. And I'm all about solving people's problems, especially with this show. So, and giving people
Mm-hmm.
an edge. So Anyway, well, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks everyone for watching Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. New episodes every Wednesday. See you next week.